What is the most messed up way you've seen someone get fired from a job? So, coworker was terminated over an email to another employee in a different department. Contents were statements of negativity of that person's supervisor, revealed that higher-ups were reading internal emails. In the end, 2 employees got fired. Then later, the supervisor got fired for not doing their job to satisfaction. Next story. I spent about 15 years of my life building someone else's company. I came from nothing, so naively thought loyalty was a thing. I thought I would spend 40 years there. Those gold watch type retirement stories type crap. That's how I was raised. I ran optimization projects and made things as efficient as I could after a restructure. But being let down by other departments at HQ, resulting in my clients losing faith in me, as well as face of the company, and my staff on the verge of downing tools, we lost a big client, which I had warned the CEO about in the months leading up to it, in emails, discussions, and messaging. Well, then HR calls me in, who is director's brother, wants my side of what's going on. Not as HR, but to understand what's happening, to make things better, to ensure the company gets through the rough patch. So, I offload all of the issues I've raised to CEO and offer emails, etc. if needed, because I'd really like it resolved so we can go back to how things were before the restructuring, keeping our clients happy, genuinely wanting to help bottlenecks and give them solutions to challenges killing our reputation. And note, I say our reputation. I really believed in that company, like it was my own. I even foiled a hostile takeover once by the director's friend. But fast forward 1 week, I'm told by HR that we need you to leave. We think there's no more place for you here. And apparently I have an anti-company attitude. Think I'm bigger than the organization and I'm poisoning clients against them. My laptop is then wiped clean with a thank you for your service from a new walk-in branch manager. And the kicker? All my staff left within 2 months of that. My counterpart across the country quit. His staff also left. Most of their institutional knowledge left them because they thought staff were just numbers on a payslip costing them money, which they could replace for cheaper. And within the year, they lost 3 of their biggest clients that brought in 75% of the total company income. So CJVR or JE, if you are reading this, F you. I would have stayed to the end. But what you did to me, SM and our staff was effed up. We were the most loyal, naive folks you could have had under your thumbs, but we know better now. Also, thank you for making me see how pathetically small, archaic, and insignificant your company is, grossly underpaying us with market-related rates. I'm glad you lost those clients, like I warned you would happen. You knew best, obviously, clearly. But just wait though, your hubris will repeat itself again, and you are deserving of its outcome. Next story. We needed our ID card to enter the parking lot. Several people were denied entry and they had to park in the external visitor lot. Well, a guard brought each of them their boxed personal effects and a letter from HR that they've been terminated. They had a conference call appointment to discuss separation issues. Next story. Glasgow University did a good one. In COVID, lots of folks had the opportunity to pivot from their normal job or furlough to do wet lab processing of tests. Folks with permanent jobs were given new, short-term contracts just for this secondment, but they didn't realize that this took over their normal open-ended contracts, and many people didn't have jobs to go back to. They basically moved folk that they had to fire onto contracts that ended. Thanks, and I don't remember saying good luck. Next story. All of my coworkers got an invitation to a Zoom conference call and were told they were being let go at the end of the month. I didn't get that invite. I got a personal phone call where they let me know that I would be the sole person remaining in my office. Then at the end of the month, with no warning, I got another personal phone call where I was told I was also being let go. It was June of 2020. Next story. During the toilet paper emergency of 2020, one of my coworkers brought a very large empty duffel bag and filled it from various housekeeping closets during night shift. He laughed in the break room as he was getting ready to leave, and one of my coworkers called security who met him at the exit and took the duffel bag and his badge and keys, and we all said goodbye in the parking lot. What an idiot. So everybody, I would just like to say, does anybody not enjoy the fact that COVID was 6 years ago? It started 6 years ago. I barely think about it anymore these days, but that was a thing that happened. Avengers Endgame came out, and then that happened. I'm sorry, I've had a painful reminder. Anyway, next story. So, we had a woman who had some kind of cancer that resulted in most of her jaw being removed. This was in a medical data entry company, so talking wasn't that big of an issue though. However, one day they announced everyone had to start taking phone calls from customers too. Everyone. Said colleague immediately gets asked to go into the supervisor's office, and she comes out bawling less than 2 minutes later and swore at him as she left. Next story. Back in 1971, my female coworker and I were both fired on the same day. The home office had sent someone to visit our office and discovered that we were both married, so we were fired. You know, because we could always get pregnant. Next story. Once worked with an 18-year-old girl who made the mistake of selling cigarettes to an undercover. It wasn't so much the firing, no one even wanted to fire her, it's just the law, as it was her reaction to it too. She was one of the few people who actually gave an F about the job. Screw-ups were out of character for her, and you could tell she took the mistake really hard. There were tears in her eyes. That job sucked anyway, so hopefully she found something better. Next story. I worked in a pub Christmas Eve, and a guy was due to come in for an evening shift. It was his second job, so he wasn't bothered. He came in during the day with his brother and mates drinking all day. By the time his shift came around, he was drunk and asleep. The landlady, who wasn't supposed to be messed with, saw him, requested a marker pen from behind the bar and wrote "You're sacked" onto his forehead. Sensing a prank, his brother got some people to write more stuff onto him. Then, same place made me redundant a month later. We were all going to be phoned up about rotas on a particular day, and when I didn't get a call, I phoned up, and when she found out it was me, the same landlady was like, "Oh, consistent. I forgot about you. Yeah, we can't afford to pay you anymore." Next story. Guy at work sat in the corner, was the least productive member of the team, and we noticed he was taking super long bathroom breaks every couple of hours. Weird. Eventually, we got suspicious and started monitoring his internet access. Turns out he was looking at adult content all day long, and I think you can guess what the bathroom breaks entailed. Then our manager came in and said, "Look, we get it, you got urges. We don't care what you do in your own time. This is your one warning to stop doing it in the office, though." And he stopped for a week, then started doing it again, and he was fired on the spot. Next story. Worked for a terrible boss back in around '03. We all sat in a bullpen, including the manager. Seth had been calling in sick a lot lately, and the boss generally did not like Seth. Then one day, the boss starts a group chat with everyone except Seth that says, "Watch this." Then the boss out loud says, "Hey Seth, can you come over for a second?" Seth says, "Sure. You know how there's no I in team?" "Yeah." "Well, there's no you either. Get the F out of here. We'll send you your stuff." And everyone else was shocked and in silence. Next story. Owner closed the business and just left the door locked with a note stating, "It's permanently closed." I don't know the legality of what he did, but my friend, amongst 12 others, were suddenly out of a job. She never heard from the owner. Next story. My old job turned off your badge, so you couldn't get in the employee entrance and would have to go to the lobby. One day I came up and a coworker was trying to get her badge to work, trying, and I felt so bad. She had just adopted her 3 grandchildren, and her work had been slipping and she had been late, absent during the adoption process, for damn understandable reasons. But the good news is, she got hired as a school social worker soon afterwards and is so happy now. Next story. I got fired for being too unprofessionally happy at my first CNA job in upstate New York. I was literally humming down the halls and dancing. Just a little, I'm not very good at it. It was my first job as a CNA. Was fired after a month. Really knocked some of the joy out of being a CNA for a little while. But been a CNA for 20 plus years now. But still, it just grates me that some people can't wait to steal the joy from others. Next story. A company that I worked with had all of the office employees meet in a conference room at a nearby hotel. After coffee and donuts, they were told to return to their offices, and if their personal effects were in a box and their computer was turned off, that they had been terminated and must leave immediately. They received phone calls later outlining their severance. Next story. One of my subordinates called to ask why he had gotten a calendar invite to an exit interview. I knew nothing about it, and the guy was one of the best young engineers I had ever hired. Well, the POS COO directed another manager to fire my employee because I wouldn't, and the other manager had completely botched the termination process. And fun fact, the company is now controlled by Howard Lutnick, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, who bankrupted the company and is in the process of moving the factory and hundreds of American manufacturing jobs offshore. Next story. When I was a chef, I fired a guy because he wouldn't wash dishes. Dishwasher was out sick, and we all washed dishes when needed, especially me, the executive chef. And the kid was fresh out of culinary school, thought he knew everything about everything. And I asked him to help catch up the dish pit, and he said, "I am a CIA graduate. I do not do dishes. That is not my job." And I looked at him for about 3 seconds and said, "You're right. It is no longer your job. You're fired." And it had been brewing for a while, changing my recipes because he didn't like them, changing my presentations because he didn't like them, pissing off the rest of the staff by acting like their boss. Only time I was happy to fire someone. Next story. I worked in IT for a large company with a branch office in London. I work from home 3 days a week. Day before Christmas Eve, I was called into the office on a home day. Was met by our director of ops and the HR demon. Long story short, I was made redundant. They gave me the option of gardening leave until the end of my employment, which I grabbed with both hands. Got it in writing, and then I went home. Tossers hadn't realized that I'd volunteered to be the on-call IT guy over Christmas and New Year's, though. According to a colleague who met his end with the company a few months later, all the IT people were mysteriously impossible to contact, so the ops director had to try to do my job. All these years later, and it still makes me smile. Next story. My husband once worked in a factory where an old guy had a heart attack in the middle of his shift. While people were swarming him and calling for an ambulance, the HR lady sprinted to the office to push his termination paperwork through. She literally ran to make sure he had no health insurance by the time he got to the hospital. We left the state shortly after, so I have no clue if the guy went through with a lawsuit. Next story. When I was an Amazon driver, one of my coworkers got bit by a dog. The warehouse pulled the van's dash cam video, saw that the dog was visible on camera before she got out of the van, and gave her a Tier 1 infraction for violating safety procedures. Fired and not eligible for rehire at Amazon or any affiliate company for 10 years. The safety procedure in question? If there is any indication that there might be a dog at the house, call the customer. If you don't get an answer, wait 5 minutes and then text the customer. If you still don't get an answer, wait 5 minutes and call again. If you still don't get an answer, bring the package back to the warehouse. Any undelivered package for any reason is also a hit on your performance metrics, which will take away your performance bonus pay for that week, and you can also get fired for that. And not all routes give you the 10 minutes of waiting to spare. Not finishing on time will also hurt your performance metrics and possibly get you suspended, depending on the contractor. Next story. Guy I used to work with at Blockbuster and kept in touch with ended up quitting and getting a job working third shift at a gas station. Worked there for over a year, got robbed at gunpoint even, and kept working there. Always willing to work extra hours. Cover shifts, short notice, never missing more than a few cents out of his drawer. Well, one night he shows up and the owner of the station is there and fires him on the spot. Reason? Instead of throwing away the old donuts, he was bagging them up and giving them to homeless people. Only reason owner ever found out was that one night when he wasn't working there, one of the homeless people stopped in and asked if they had any donuts from the morning they were going to toss, and let slip that my friend was giving them to him instead of throwing them in the dumpster. After that, not only did the owner threaten all of the other employees with immediate termination if they gave homeless people anything ever, but he demanded that all food waste be kept in the building by the back door until he or his son came in the morning so they could dump bottles of bleach on it before throwing it in the dumpster themselves. Because no way was he letting people get free food from his gas station, not even if it was being thrown out. Effing scumbags. Next story. I don't think this is exactly what you're asking me for, but back when I was a supervisory manager, I had to let someone go, and it messed me up. Look, the kid was super nice, great attitude, and a joy to talk to, but he just couldn't do the job. I was transferred into the job and was told I'd have to let him go at some point. I refused to accept that though and held multiple training sessions, tried giving him other responsibilities, etc. We eventually had to pull him off of his main job duties because others were spending too much time cleaning up his mistakes. It was a data analysis job without going into too much detail, and I gave him tedious work to keep him busy, and my boss let me know we couldn't keep him on. I asked if we couldn't just have him do menial tasks, but he correctly reminded me it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the staff who would have to carry his slack. So, when we let him go, he was really sad, but he handled it well. He said something like, "I tried my absolute best," and all I could say was, I know, and that's what makes this so difficult. What made it even worse was this person was handicapped in a wheelchair, so escorting him out of the building was just awful. All this to say, I know it sucks getting fired, but it sucks for the firer sometimes too. Everyone thinks about the people who deserve to get fired because they're screw-ups or jerks, but there are really nice people who sometimes just can't hack it, and those are the ones that are crushing. Next story. In college, I worked at Home Depot. It was literally the worst store chain at the time. Huge theft meant that the managers were always trying to cut hours to keep our store afloat. One day, there's a cashier in the store, a cart wrangler, and a lady designing cabinets. And there's a customer there losing his mind because his Home Depot sent him here almost an hour away to get a bathroom cabinet, and there's one way up in upper shelving stock. So the kitchen designer goes up in an order picker and can't pull it off the rack due to its weight, so she steps onto the rack to try and drag it over. The assistant manager came back from lunch and saw her step onto the rack, fired her when she came down to ground level, and let her go on the spot. No one could help this cat and this 50-some-year-old woman trying to help get booted out for an infraction. Next story. When I was in high school, I had a part-time job detailing cars at a high-end shop. Think Mercedes, Ferraris, that sort of place. One Friday, this guy drops off his Lamborghini. Boss says it'll be done Monday. No problem. I come in Sunday, and everyone is talking about how the assistant manager got fired. Turns out, he took the Lamborghini out Saturday night on a date to impress this gal he was seeing. Guess who saw the car cruising around town? Yep, the owner of said car. Idiot really thought no one would notice. All right, look, is it a stupid way to get fired? Absolutely. Is it a creative and flashy way to get fired? Sure, it's something out of a TV show, so I'll give you 3 out of 10 points for that. You got fired, but you got to drive a Lamborghini, and maybe you got laid too. I don't know how there's going to be a second date without a really weird conversation though. Anyway, next story. So, boss/owner thought the online store was going to replace my job, neglecting to realize that someone had to maintain inventory, client contact, shipping, etc. He did it over text message on a Wednesday at 11 a.m. saying my last day would be Friday. I never came back from lunch and started with a competitor on Monday. Most clients, they followed, and he blew my phone up for weeks after realizing the whole process I had in place wasn't something you learn overnight. To this day, he can't keep someone in that role longer than for 3 months. My favorite part was deactivating my email as I left, which 99% of the company's comms was done through. That really effed him up. Next story. My regional manager once asked me to fire someone during a holiday event held at the office. We just had our bonus awards and finished the White Elephant gift exchange. The party was in full swing with a DJ and all. Me, I was young, new to the job, and very scared of this woman. She was always angry and always yelled, but still, I said, no, I won't. I don't think that's a very good idea, but you can do it if you want. I told her I'll do it properly when the employee returns from their paid time off next Monday. This was Friday, they'd be off until a week from the coming Monday. If she still wanted me to do that, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it here and I wouldn't do it right now tonight, when everyone's been drinking, including me and the person I'm supposed to get rid of. It was after work hours and their direct reports were all right there with them having fun. I was practically in tears for the rest of the night waiting for her to axe him in front of everybody, but she didn't. The guy still got let go right after Christmas, but in the right way, in my opinion. Not this trash humans version of what we should do. It was bad enough it had to be at holiday time, and people wonder why employees sometimes go postal. Next story. It was the bi-weekly all-employee Zoom call. At the end of the call, the CEO asked the CTO to stay on the call after everyone dropped off. About 10 minutes later, the AI-generated meeting minutes were issued to all attendees. The private part between the CEO and CTO. Turns out they were planning to fire someone and they were discussing the details. Guy found out he was getting fired by reviewing the minutes. Next story. I had to be a union steward in a meeting held via Zoom where the employee fired a woman who was in the hospital waiting for a liver transplant that she needed due to an autoimmune disease. They'd kept her on payroll via sick leave donations and FMLA extensions as long as they were legally allowed to. We're taxpayer funded, so there's laws prohibiting the gift of public funds that come into play. But a new liver just didn't come soon enough for her. The HR lady clearly was upset that she had to fire the employee, and the employee was begging them not to so she wouldn't lose her insurance. It was awful. Next story. I got laid off while my wife and I were on our Babymoon for our first child. She was 6 months pregnant. I had taken a Monday and Tuesday off for a long weekend. I saw a text message from my boss on my personal phone, not my work phone, and I called him and let him know that our whole department got laid off that morning. HR insisted that he summon me on PTO, to which he declined. What were they gonna do, fire him harder? And he back-channeled that info to me, which I massively appreciated. So when I was back in on Wednesday, I got my Teams meeting put on my calendar for a meeting to take place in less than an hour. The VP didn't even know me or care. Our department had over 350 years of combined work experience. It was convenient that it was the week after I finished a major 4-year-long project for the company. Our pregnancy journey took us almost 5 years to get to that point. Our child is doing wonderfully, and he's the apple of our eyes. Corporate work is soulless. Next story. Engineer got caught watching adult videos on his work computer at work. HR had screenshots every time he watched. Husband's predecessor got caught meeting up with the 16-year-old that was actually an undercover cop, and he drove 200 miles across state lines. Then, my predecessor also got caught by an auditor blackout drunk on her desk with an empty water bottle that smelled suspiciously of vodka. Next story. Boss threw a congrats on retiring party for someone who had no intention of retiring. This person was useless but relatively well-liked, so I think this was his way of firing but making it friendly. But it came as a total surprise to this person, probably because they would have put up a huge fit if he'd done it any other way. Still messed up to get blindsided like that, though. Next story. Company I work for had a customer ask for a dedicated expert assigned to them to work full-time at the customer's facility. Our company recruited heavily and finally interviewed and hired an expert. The week before they started, the customer changed their mind. They didn't want anyone anymore. Our company withdrew their employment offer to the candidate that had just quit their job, sold their house, and moved to the new city. Next story. This was a small healthcare non-profit, and some contracts were lost. They put a last-minute meeting invite on those who were getting let go and piled them into a conference room. It was about half the staff. The CEO rambled on, speaking nonsense per the usual, and let everyone go a week and a half prior to Christmas. The kicker? His son just started and kept his fake job. And another fun fact, the terrible VP who stole everyone's ideas, the CEO, and the CEO's son still got a fat bonus, like $250,000 worth for a non-profit. This is poor government spending, but somehow still gets contracts. Next story. A company my wife used to work for wanted to let her go. She was good at her job though, so they didn't have cause, and she was 5 months pregnant at the time. They knew she could sue them and claim her pregnancy was the reason she was let go, but it wasn't the reason. They would have had a hard time proving it. So to make it all legit, they also let go the other woman in the office who had the same position. Being able to claim they were just eliminating the position altogether was enough to cover their ass. The other woman was let go just so they could justify letting my wife go. Next story. I worked at a restaurant that was hosting a bar mitzvah. The bar mitzvah boy had a special food allergies which were noted as a part of the space rental and gone over when figuring out the menu. The head chef then made food for the party which included ingredients the boy was allergic to. Thankfully, someone at the party noticed and pointed it out to the event planner, who I worked with, and the event planner obviously had a meltdown because the chef almost killed the boy. There had been long other issues with that chef too, so this was the final nail in his coffin, and he was gone the next day. Next story. I was a new hire out of training at Academy Corporate. I had been there 2 to 4 months maybe, and it's a bit fuzzy on how I got fired, but I think it was pretty deserved. I think I called out one day as having a flat tire, but then like the very next day I actually did have a flat tire, or maybe it was 2 flats back to back, I don't know. Regardless, I used 2 days off when I shouldn't have. I was younger, and who really cares? I could tell that place was a soul snatcher, office deep inside of a building, no windows. But anyhow, Academy apparently terminated me with the agency, which the agency tried to call me, but they were unable to reach me over the weekend. So I showed up on Monday and got into the office building, no issues, badging at multiple doors, and a short time later, after being at my desk and realizing I was seemingly locked out, the superior politely pulls me to the side and said something like, "We're not going to need you today." And I knew at this point, I was fired. But this is the humiliating part. I'm trying to leave, and you have to use a badge at multiple doors. Well, I guess they panicked when I got there and pinged IT and deactivated my stuff after I was already in the building. Now I'm stuck trying to leave. I had to wait for a random person to walk by to get the hell out of there. I quickly called my agency, telling them what's going on, and they just said, "We tried to call." Well, you should have made damn sure I was reached. So embarrassing. Next story. So, not me personally, but I was there when it happened. I was a vendor to a large software simulation company located at the time in the Houston area. Katy, I think. We were helping to install updated software that they needed to do the simulations. The site hosted about 1,000 projects. At 11 a.m., there was a mandatory meeting in a large auditorium and a teleconference with the main office in Boston. We were not invited, but all of the locals were there. And by noon, the place was a ghost town. The entire site was sacked. People were leaving in droves. Some are angry, many are upset and crying. I looked at my partner and said, "What do we do? We haven't been paid yet." So we kept installing the software and we were done by 4 o'clock. Not a soul in sight, not even security. We left the servers running and just left. We did get paid, but I wonder to this day what really happened. And by the way, the company, it still exists. Next story. I fired someone for neglect of a client in one of my group homes. Dude was naked on the floor for 3 hours screaming for help while the dude was fast asleep on the couch with his own pillow and blanket too. I feel like my get the F out of here was excused considering the PTSD he inflicted on the poor client. Next story. My company did a round of layoffs a few years ago. They did it all in one day, but individually, so we all knew it was happening and freaking out about who was next. At the time, our company used a Facebook product called Workplace for internal communications, and as the company was preparing to lay off an employee, they would deactivate that employee's account before calling them in. So that's how I found out my work buddy was about to get a call. I had about a 30-second window to message them before their Teams account was disabled. It was a rough day. Next story. My first week working in a restaurant, the hiring manager got caught in the back cooler having paid relations with an underage girl. He was in his 50s, married with 3 kids, and she was 13. Supposedly, he had met her when she came in and started talking to her. Then, the boss from another store came in for a surprise inspection and found them. And the hiring manager tried to say that what they thought they saw wasn't really what happened until the big boss pulled up the cameras and asked if he really wanted to stick to his story. So, he got arrested, and come to find out, he had a long list of past crimes of this sort, and he never said anything about it. Shortly afterwards, a few people at the store got fired for not running background checks and eliminating people that didn't pass. Me, I quit about a month into that job because it sucked, and anytime I would ask for off was always denied because basically nobody worked there by this time. Next story. There had been rumors of a possible reduction of workforce layoff. One idiot barged into a committee meeting and said, "I heard X and I want to know if that bullcrap is real." And then the president looked at him and said, "Well, yes, we're having a reduction of forces. We're announcing next month that laying off 80 workers, but I think we'll go ahead and do it today." That idiot pissed off a lot of people. Interesting side note, though, I was actually off that day for my grandmother's funeral. They called me in before the funeral to let me go. They were nice about it, telling me I could return anytime to retrieve my stuff. Many others were escorted out and not allowed to return. The bad part, my father and brother worked at the same plant. I was the only one to get laid off, but I had to wait to tell my father as I wasn't going to let him know the day we buried his mom. Next story. This was me. I found out I was getting fired from my mom. I worked at a big box store in college, and unbeknownst to me, she was in there shopping for Christmas stuff and heard 2 low-level managers talking about someone getting fired. She thought it was me and cornered them, and sure enough, it was. So, they violated some policies and maybe a labor law? So to avoid the potential lawsuit, the store manager fired/rehired me with my mom sitting in the office, and I stayed there till I enlisted in the military a couple of years later. Next story. I am a long-time building union rep. Much of my job is protecting teachers from bullcrap. Until Miss Loud, I'm calling her that because she was effing loud, well, she taught in Detroit for 25 years, came to our district for more money and more calm. Good on her. But the first time I saw her, I thought she was somebody off of the streets. I know this is a bad thing to say, but she looked white trashy. Crappy tats, half her head shaved, clothes that didn't look clean. I say this to paint the picture that she did not fit in super well. The kids, however, loved her. So, okay, I was wrong. I admitted to my coworker. It takes all kinds, etc. Then, our rep team got a message from her. She called a kid a male private part in class. To be fair, he did something dumb, took another kid's seat and wouldn't get up, but you really can't call a 9th grader that. His parents got involved, she got a warning. About 2 weeks later, though, we get a message from admin saying they needed one of us to go to a meeting with her. I happened to see that admin first in the morning, so I grabbed him and said, "Hey, can I have a heads up on this?" and he pulled out his phone and showed me the video of her letting her class out about 10 minutes early and running around in the hallways with them. The neighboring teachers, of course, complained. But we got her through that one. Then, a few weeks later, she contacted our team about a video going around about her. The first thought was that some stupid recorded her doing something not cool and spread it around. But oh no, it was not that. You see, girlfriend was hosting a fight club in her classroom. I saw the video. Desks were pushed back. The kids were gathering around. She was at her desk laughing, hooting, and hollering while two boys wrestled in the middle of the room. Yeah, girl, the union can't save you from that one. And all of this went down before Halloween, by the way. Next story. Cruise ship. Buddy from Nicaragua got into a fight with a Filipino man that happened to be great friends with the HOD. The Filipino guy started it, and Buddy had 45 witnesses more. But the cruise ship is very good at enforcing the no tolerance, so we thought he was out the next day. But they made him work for like the remaining 12 days of the cruise route, and then, out of nowhere, he gets called, reprimanded, discharged, and replaced within 2 hours for the fight before. They didn't pay him his last 12 days, and he is still fighting that case with ITF last I've heard. Not just the 12 days, but for everything else. Next story. Got an email from my boss. Discussion meeting regarding your future in the company. Okay, no negative feedback, no complaints, nothing. To my boss's surprise, I showed up with a representative from the union who also doubles as a lawyer. She then tried to fire me over false accusations, claiming I had received several complaints, none of which she could substantiate. In a final desperate attempt, she accused me of sexually harassing a coworker. Then at this point, my lawyer called for a break in the meeting. My boss stepped out, and my lawyer turned to me and said she had never seen a more vile, desperate, and downright horrible attempt at getting someone fired in her 26 years of experience. I could only laugh in disbelief at that point. But the meeting resumed, my lawyer explained to my boss the way the world works, and my boss dropped all of her accusations. End of meeting. And the kicker? The coworker I supposedly sexually harassed by kissing was my wife. I handed in my resignation later that month after landing a much better job, and so did my wife and another coworker. So yeah, she got what she wanted times 3. Effing B-word she was. Next story. 2 employees and the supervisor got fired. The supervisor would get employee number 1 for lunch and drinks after work, and the employee would pay for everything. The employee would then show that he worked on Saturday and put it on his timesheet, and the supervisor would approve it. Then employee 2 was having sex with the supervisor, and she would put that she worked on Saturday, and the supervisor would approve it. They all got caught, and they all got fired. Alright guys, what a tremendous setup. If this was a small, medium, mom-and-pop shop type store, I would feel bad about the wasted hours and expenses, but if this is a big company, why not? Dude's getting laid, dude's getting fed, he's getting paid too, just for the love of the game. Nobody's really getting hurt here, unless they're like into really freaky stuff, but even then, they probably had a safe word. This is amazing. I don't care. Anyway, next story. So, I had to fire a guy on December 23rd. He left me no choice and kind of pushed me to do it right then and there. I knew where we were on the calendar, and I really didn't want to do it that night. I caught crap from a lot of people over that, but I knew what happened, and in the end, it didn't matter. I couldn't let him have access to our files and our clients. He had to go. Next story. I worked for a large health system that had been bought out by a for-profit company. All of our employees, over 2 or 3K people, were notified that the entire health system was shutting down via email on Easter Monday this year. No warning, no meetings, just in email. Only a few departments were bought by other companies. A large majority of employees lost their jobs that month, and then those who weren't in those select few departments were let go slowly during wind-down operations. People are still having difficulties getting their 401ks and pensions. 2 large hospitals closed, and now there is no hospital in the immediate area for emergencies or inpatient care. Employees lost their livelihoods, and innocent, usually impoverished people lost all levels of their healthcare and emergency medicine. If you need to go to the ER, the wait time at the nearest hospitals is 15 hours or more unless you are actively dying. That hospital, along with urgent care clinics in the area, is massively overwhelmed. So, F you Prospect Medical Holdings. I hope that one day justice finds you. Next story. So, I was head of an internal IT team for a Fortune 500 company at their headquarters campus. We had this one British guy in his mid-20s that was on my team of 3. Literally, the week after he hit 1 year working for us and qualified, He got sick leave and claimed he had some bullcrap burnout stress thing. Well, in this country, it's really hard to fire someone, especially if they are on doctor-ordered sick leave. They are entitled to it for like 2 years with the right doctor's paperwork. And so he was getting 80%, 40% from us and 40% from his insurance company, of his $150,000 salary, and I wasn't even legally allowed to hire someone else to fill his position, even a short-term contractor. HR told me there was nothing they could do. Hands were tied. Would have taken us months to hire a replacement anyway, as we were a very specialized team. The city isn't big enough that you don't hear things and know people who know people, especially the expat community. There are only 2 popular British/Irish pubs in the city. And wouldn't you know it, he was out all the time drinking. A lot. Never missed a football match. So I got quite suspicious a few months in and started my own little off-the-books investigation. Found someone he knew that had him on Instagram and Facebook. He had under a different last name, and they were pretty locked down, but they showed me his profiles and sent me screenshots. They thought he was an a-hole, so they were happy to do it. Basically, several months of him partying in Ibiza and traveling all the time to party spots, music festivals and such. Then started Googling this new name he had under his Facebook and found a LinkedIn. Different last name from one we had on his CV. Found some friends of people at companies who followed him on the second LinkedIn account. They told me everything, basically. Dude started his own consulting business that he registered in the UK. Had several clients who I figured out here and there. He was working, advertising for new clients, and had been doing that starting a few months before he got sick leave at my company. So I gathered all the info I had, set a meeting with my director, a VP, HR, and legal, laid it all out for them, and they let me call him in and fire him myself. We and the insurance company did a further investigation and sued him for his salary, and he gave it all back before it went to court. Referred him to the police for fraud. I called all of his clients and they all dropped him, and I used every connection I had everywhere to blacklist him. And then later his wife. I then filed a complaint with the medical board for the doctor that signed off on his medical leave, also after I found out it was a doctor at the office where his wife worked. I never found out if anything came from that. Legal took it over. I even called up someone I knew at immigration offices to make a note in his file for the next time he needed to renew his visa. He stopped showing up around town a few weeks later and haven't seen him since. And here's the thing. I didn't care about the money he was taking. It wasn't mine, but he left my team short-handed and I had to suffer for that. And the 2 of us had to give up holidays to cover for him as we were all on call 24/7. F him. Next story. Oh, that's easy. Carnival Cruise Lines, 1992. Low-level officer who was a purser's staff, like an assistant to the assistant hotel manager, he went on a booze bender, caused a scene by the pool in front of passengers, and cussed out the Italian captain, cruise director, everybody really. Then he went to his cabin, or was thrown in, I'm not sure. But what I am sure of is, they woke him up at 4 a.m., told him to pack up all of his crap, stood over him while doing it, and put him and his stuff off at the next port of call. Escorted off the ship. It was a tiny, desolate, and isolated island. Definitely not one of the main ones. No idea what happened to him from there. Next story. So I didn't witness the first part of it. Dude came to work drunk and was very inappropriate towards colleagues and guests. He was a waiter, server, barkeeper, all-arounder really. He was told by shift manager to go home multiple times, but the dude kept coming back multiple times. He kept coming back even in the early AM after the place closed. Fun little detail though, the owner lives nearby and has his office in the building with the restaurant. So he was coming home after some late event, went to his office to check something, and saw the guy trying to open the key safe just outside. Escorted him off the premises and found out the rest of the story the next morning. Maybe the firing itself wasn't that messed up, but the guy had gotten himself in a mess that got him fired. Alright y'all, this has been a fun one. I don't think I have any personal relevant stories off the top of my head. As a creative and a voice actor, I've been on projects that just never go anywhere, and then I'll get like a sudden message saying, hey, it's done for. I used to narrate for a channel. I think it was the first channel I narrated for, but they were just like, hey, we're done today, goodbye. And everyone's like, what the hell? But nothing so crazy or traumatic or hilarious worth sharing. And actually, if you think about it, I think Undersparked and Really Sparked has been my longest employer ever. I've been doing this for 3 years now. Isn't that crazy? I'm still learning new things reading these stories, and I enjoy it, and hopefully you guys enjoy me yapping into your ears. And I also love the other 3 narrators. I want to kiss them. But anyway, guys, we're at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching, letting me ramble. Have a good one, and bye-bye!